Hello and welcome to Here Comes the Bride, The Church Begins. I'm Pastor Jim Devore, the pastor at Cornerstone Church of Littlerock in Southern California. We are taking a regular look through the book of Acts and asking ourselves as we read of the stories and events in the book of Acts, what do we learn about God's eternal plan? What do we see how God is operating in the church, his eternal plan through the church? And finally, the third question is, how do we see God using individuals in order to accomplish his eternal plan? So let's dive in and do that. We're in Acts chapter 25. Acts chapter 25. Now, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, there's a lot of reading today. This is kind of a setup chapter for Acts chapter 26. So let's dive in and get going. Chapter 25, verse 1. Now, 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea. Okay, Paul has been waiting in prison for a total of 2 years. He was almost killed by a mob. He was rescued by the tribune, and the tribune then turned him over to Felix. Felix, kind of saw him a couple of times, but didn't really take him seriously. But in order to impress the Jews, because the Jews want him killed, or at least jailed and hurt and injured, okay? So Felix decided in order to be nice to the Jews, he wouldn't settle Paul's case beforehand, but instead left it for the next governor or the next man to be in charge, and that is going to be Porcius Festus. So Paul's in jail for at least 2 years, waiting. Okay, he hasn't even had his trial yet. He's guilty till proven innocent. Okay, all right. So 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, so he became the ruler of the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea, and the chief priests and the principal men of the Jews laid out their case against Paul, and they urged him. So he arrives in Caesarea, Festus does. He goes to Jerusalem. The Jewish leaders come, lay out their case. Paul's back in Caesarea, and Festus is in Jerusalem. Okay, all right. So the Jews laid out their case against Paul, and they urged him, chapter 25, verse 3, asking a favor against Paul that he summon him to Jerusalem because they were planning on ambush to kill him on the way. They've got the same plan they had over 2 years ago. We want to hear Paul out. We want to talk to him again. But just so happens on the way, we're going to have him killed. We certainly know that the guys from before who took an oath to not eat or drink until this happened over 2 years ago, well, if they followed through with their oath, they died in their oath. But we don't know if they backed out or not, but same tune, second verse, same plan. Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea and that he himself intended to go there shortly. So said he, let the men of authority among you go down with me, and if there's anything wrong about the man, let them bring charges against him. He's not coming to you. We'll go to him. So if you're really serious, send some of your men, and we'll have the charges there. And he, Festus, stayed among them not more than 8 or 10 days. He went down to Caesarea, and the next day he took his seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought. When he had arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him that they could not prove. They had all kinds of accusation and nothing that was true. Okay? All right. Paul argued in his defense, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I committed any offense. So I haven't committed a law against the Jews, and I haven't committed a law against Caesar. Okay? But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, as we'll say also, said to Paul, do you wish to go up to Jerusalem and there be tried on these charges before me? Okay, so do you want me to take you to Jerusalem? We can try you on the charges. If you're as innocent as they say, you should be let go free. Or maybe Festus is thinking, I'll come up with a reason then to let the Jews have their way with you. Paul knows what's going on. He hasn't forgotten what they tried 2 years ago. Paul said, I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as you yourself know very well. If I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death. But if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar. Now, what's going on here? When Paul appeals to Caesar, he is saying, I am a Roman citizen. I have the right to have my trial before Caesar, okay, the highest court in the land, and going to be in Rome, where God told Paul he'd end up anyways. Okay, he's taking advantage of his rights of a Roman citizen and saying, look, I want to have a fair trial before the Caesar, and so I'm not going to go down to Jerusalem. If you're going to continue to hold me, then you're going to have to find me guilty or innocent, but you're going to have to get me it's going to have to be done in front of Caesar. I have a right to have Caesar make the verdict on me. Festus, when he had conferred with his council, answered, to Caesar you have appealed, to Caesar you shall go. So in other words, off you go, Paul. We'll go ahead and let you have your way. You'll go all the way to Rome to have this settled. Okay? Verse 13 of Acts chapter 25. Now when some days had passed, Agrippa, the king, and Bernice arrived at Caesarea and greeted Festus. Agrippa is not the king of all of the Roman land, okay? He's just the king of this region, okay? And Festus works for him. And as they stayed there many days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, there's a man left prisoner by Felix, and when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews laid out their case against him, asking for a sentence of condemnation against him. I answered them that it was not the custom of the Romans to give up anyone before the accused met the accusers face to face and an opportunity to make this defense according to the charge laid against him. So when they came together here, I made no delay, but on the next day took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. When the accusers stood up, they brought no charge in his case of such evils as I suppose. Rather, they had certain points of disputes with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who was dead, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. Okay, so we didn't actually hear this testimony immediately before Festus. We heard it way back when it was presented to Felix, but the argument is still the same. They lie about Paul. They say that he defamed the temple and he did other things against the religion. Paul responds and says, look, the only difference we have is that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. He died and he rose from the dead. According to Festus, that's a religious argument. Nothing for me to kill the man over. Being at a loss, verse 20, Acts 25, how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wanted to go to Jerusalem and be tried there regarding them. But when Paul had appealed to be kept in custody for the decision of the emperor, I ordered him to be held until I could send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said to Festus, I'd like to hear the man myself. Tomorrow, said he, you will hear him. So on the next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp, and they entered the audience hall with the military tribunes and the prominent men of the city. Then at the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. And Festus said, King Agrippa and men about whom the whole Jewish people petitioned me, both in Jerusalem and here, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. But I found that he had done nothing deserving death. And as he himself appealed to the emperor, I decided to go ahead and send him. But I have nothing definite to write to my lord about him. Therefore I brought him before you all, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after we've examined him, I may have something to write. For it seems to me unreasonable in sending a prisoner not to indicate the charges against him. Okay, in a very formal sense, what Festus says is, here's your man. King Agrippa, he doesn't say, hey, I'm making this assembly so King Agrippa gets a chance to meet Paul. He's just making it look formal. They're going to question Paul. Festus is hoping that in the questioning and the process between he and King Agrippa being together, they can come up with some type of formal charge to present to Caesar so that they can wrap this case up and not have it just dangling. Festus is ready to let him go, but he can't because Paul's now appealed to Caesar, but he can't send him to Caesar without a trial, and so he's hoping that between he and Agrippa kind of being the name-dropping person to have on the letter now they're going to sign together, they can come up with a reason, so to speak, to have Paul sent to Caesar for a potential trial. Okay? All right. There's the setup. You're going to have to join us again next time as we continue with Acts chapter 26, with Here Comes the Bride, the church begins.